Never up, never down, never. Like a theme in a song, clever. Feeling high, feeling low at the same time. Feels so right, then I'm wrong, hoping I'll be fine. But I get up, I always do. I never think, I always do. Never thought I wouldn't jump, oh what a fool. But if I fall, I will get up again.
Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Harry and Meghan Divorced You All in March 2020. Introduction. The podcast last week used the Kubler-Ross model of the 7 stages of grief to summarise the changing emotions and actions of the UK establishment about Harry, formally announcing on the 8th of January 2020 that he and Meghan were going to step back from their senior working royal roles and leave the UK, with the aim to starting a new life independent from the UK taxpayers. The previous 4 years had taken a terrible toll on the mental health of the Sussexes, and the only way they feel can focus on healing and starting a new life and find ways to generate income is to go it alone and seek out opportunities. The risks to their lives has been increasing since 2016, and it reached a point where, for the sake of their mental health, it was necessary to step back. From royal working life and the sense of entitlement by UK media into areas of life not pursued with any other member of the royal family, and to seek a fresh new start. The activity around the 7 stages of the grief model clearly demonstrated the growing anger from the monarchy family and its media, together with the fake olive branches offered dressed up as consolation, and resulting in the 2023/24 stages that they wanted the complete destruction of the couple, where they would beg to return to the fold, or at the very least destroy Meghan, and wished for the breakup of the marriage and for Harry to return to be his brother's footstool again for the next few years. The monarch has no interest in his non-white grandchildren, and footage and photos of both he and his consort provide proof in abundance, in contrast to the words they utter in front of most cameras. Rubber stamp that approach around people of colour or their children. Archie and Lilibet are much safer outside of the plantation behind gilded gates. So now we are left with a situation where the monarchy family and its media continues to behave like an ex-partner who cannot accept that their partner has left the building and now, after 4 years, forging a new and very successful life. The UK contingent in the establishment is now having to look at the situation like divorce proceedings. The monarchy family is not happy, not helped by the fact that 2 of the senior royals are suffering with cancer, apparently, and one of them has not been seen since Christmas 2023. The King is battling on and has recently resumed some duties. He looks far from well, but he is doing what he can. All the while, his successor hovering like a raven, but trying to give the impression that he's worried about his wife, who on paper is also suffering with cancer. Whatever the truth of the matter, something is not right, health-wise. And one day, we may be given an official version of what that is. And no doubt, it will never be spoken of again. Needless to say, the King needs Harry back, because the next in line has barely been seen in 2024, and is not displaying behaviour that fills the monarchy family with confidence. And add to that the reduction in numbers. They really expect Harry, who they have treated like a toxic doormat for years, to come back out of duty and fill the gaps, and then expect to be cast aside when it suits the establishment. Desperate times ahead, and there is no hesitation in people admitting that the royal family has produced even less output than normal since Harry and Meghan escaped the abuse and stayed in Canada, and then eventually moved to the USA, where a home was provided for the family whilst they got their bearings. That home was provided by Tyler Perry, an angel walking this earth. The King pulled security and ceased funding without warning, whilst the Sussex family were on a Xmas break in Canada. The monarchy family then informed royal reporters of their exact location, and the island that they were staying on became invaded by land and sea. That is the kind of monarchy the UK has. And then they wonder why 4 years of continued abuse of the family and the loss of a baby along the way, the metaphorical divorce needed to happen. Let's look at the framework of a divorce process and use events of the UK royals and the Sussex family to populate areas of divorce and broad headings of the abusive activity over those 8 years. What is a contested divorce? A contested divorce refers to the circumstances when a spouse wants to defend the divorce petition issued by the court. This normally occurs when the respondent party does not accept what is said about them within an unreasonable behaviour petition, or challenges the period of separation relied upon by the petitioner. The royal family tried to justify their interference into contractual matters by saying that Harry and Meghan could not sign any contract without the monarch seeing all the documentation first, and whether to approve it or not. The first contract they wanted to see was the Netflix one. Very soon, the monarchy was made aware that any contract news published meant that documents had already been signed. There are no discussions to be had in such circumstances. Harry and Meghan had secured their first major contract, and there was nothing that the royal family could do about it. Netflix does not have to release any documentation to anyone other than the people they have entered into an agreement with. This contract enabled Harry and Meghan to purchase their own home, another sign to the UK that they were putting down roots in the USA. What grounds can I rely on for a divorce? To be granted a divorce, the court must be satisfied that a marriage has irretrievably broken down. Currently, there are 5 facts, in other words, grounds, to prove that irretrievable breakdown has occurred, and this is how it is explained to a court. There are 5 legal areas which could be used in terms of putting forward a case for a divorce to take place. Now, in our scenario, where we're using a breakdown between a member of the family moving away and becoming independently funded, of those 5 areas that I'm going to read out, one, and only one, is the one that is most applicable. But I will read out all 5, and you will see more information when you look at the article in the future. But just know it's one of them out of the 5, and I'll tell you when I come to it. 1. Adultery. The respondent must admit to having sexual relations with a person of the opposite sex, and as a result the petitioner finds it intolerable to continue to live with them. A point to note is that you cannot rely upon this fact if you continue to live with your spouse for a period of 6 months after you have first become aware of the adultery. Reason number 2, and this is the one that I have sort of loosely applied in terms of the situation with the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family and its pals. Unreasonable behaviour. For this fact, it must be proven that the husband or wife has behaved in such a way which means you cannot reasonably be expected to live with them. Such unreasonable behaviour can be anything from verbal and or emotional abuse, any form of violence, controlling and or secretive behaviour, as well as financial irresponsibility. This tends to be the most common fact used to start divorce proceedings. 3. Desertion. Desertion requires the petitioner to show that the respondent has abandoned them continuously for at least 2 years without agreement or consent. This is by far the least used fact in divorce proceedings, as it can be difficult to provide evidence. 4. Separated for 2 years with consent. If you have lived separately from your spouse for a continuous period of at least 2 years, and they have also consented, agreed to a divorce, you can then file for a divorce based on this fact. This is one of the non-fault divorce facts currently available. 5. Separated for 5 years. The final fact for which a divorce can take place is when you have lived apart from your husband or wife for a continuous period of at least 5 years. This fact does not require the agreement to the divorce by the respondent party. another section, but we'll go into more detail about this a little bit later in the podcast, and also it'll be touched upon next week. Unreasonable behaviour. Unreasonable behaviour is the most commonly relied upon reason for a marriage breaking down. This next section is a few extracts from a podcast that I did in June 2021, the title of which was UK Media, Stop Clinging to the Sussex Wave. Some of you may remember aspects of this, others it's new to you, so you don't know the contents. But it all links up with what we were doing and covering last week, and it will also link up with what we're going to cover next week. The British royal family and its media are acting exactly like an ex-spouse who is angry that their victim has escaped from their abusive behaviour. The abusers double down on the abuse as a way of trying to give the impression that they still had control over the actions of Harry and Meghan. Since Harry and Meghan have managed to leave that perceived gilded prison, there has been an increasing sinister nature to the public attacks on the couple, Meghan in particular, all done via UK media partners. The risks on their lives and that of their eldest child, and subsequently were responsible for the loss of their next baby, following the continuing abusive behaviour towards the Sussex family after they moved to the USA. The vitriol towards the third pregnancy and the naming of that baby was truly so disgusting. There are no words I could say or print here without losing control. There has been no sign of the British royal family standing down from these attacks, and there still seems to be some kind of strange belief that if harm comes to Meghan and children, in whatever form, then the marriage would end, and Harry would somehow return to the UK and forget about all the abuse dished out to him and his family. At this point, in theory, Harry would be alone and without a purposeful role, other than to be a whipping boy for William. Only people with an evil mindset could ever possibly believe that Harry would return to be the royal slave under any circumstances. I have come to the conclusion that the British royal family are cold, and the security of a monarchy for decades to come is the only thing that matters. The end justifies the means. True cult-like behaviour. Despite that betrayal by his family, the Sussexes did not fail at the barriers clearly placed in their way, or the fake olive branches offered several times over the last 8 years, all part of the charade of wanting Harry to return to the plantation behind gilded gates, and equally the fake admonishments of broken bridges everywhere, all of it performative nonsense to fill copy for newspaper litter tray liners in the quest for income. The Archel Foundation is doing well and is supporting an increasing range of sustainable projects and charities. The Sussexes have their own home, and it is clear that they will never reside in the UK again. Not least because the King evicted Harry and Meghan and their children from Frogmore Cottage in June 2023. Despite the Sussexes paying back £2.4 million for roof renovation work, which already had money set aside in the sovereign grant to pay for the said renovation of the roof, just like all the renovation work on Crown property earmarked for improvements. It had all been paid back, and the rent had been paid in advance for a considerable period. Harry is far too obliging, because I would demand my 2.4 million be returned, together with my rental payments that I paid in advance. The eviction was yet another vindictive act by a king and a father. For every act of evil that people wish on others and go out of their way to ensure that their wish is fulfilled, always at some point returns to its host. Hate-filled thoughts will eventually feed from the host. Karma has a way of balancing the books. The Sussexes owe no one, and they do not cost the UK taxpayer anything at all. The couple are independent and self-financing. The majority of the activity around the Sussexes, both from 2016 to March 2020, and then from March 2020 to the present day, has been unnecessary. They are not working royals, and the daily onslaught of activity is more than all the working royals combined, and in many areas is unlawful. The king may be protected, for the time being, but everyone else in that family needs to start facing reality. Everyone should be treated equal under the law. Not everyone else but the monarchy. The mood of the UK is slowly changing, and right now, those relatives of the king need to start reconsidering their future, because they will not be protected by the monarch forever, no matter if the monarch would like to do so. As for UK media, they foolishly believe that they are protected because they are carrying out the wishes of the monarch. That may be the case, but no media personality is protected by law, and I see those at the bottom of the media food chain who are the ones commissioning or involved in the delivery of unlawful activity by travelling to Montecito and are therefore part of the rabble breaking the law. You all need to wake up. This stalker-like activity that you are all involved in daily with your articles and the discussions between other colleagues on your YouTube channels are all part of abusive activity. I'm not about to lay it all out for you here, as I am sure one day you are going to all find out the hard way. The establishment, which includes the monarchy and its media, are all acting like an ex-partner who is refusing to accept that their other half has dared to move away from the abuse. Now, as part of the silent contract between the king and UK media, you are all involved in trying to destroy the Sussex family and to force them home, preferably only Harry. If that does not work, you want to destroy them completely out of pure malice and jealousy. Just know that those at the top of the establishment tree won't be going to jail or attend any court about the activity and the behaviour of the junior members of the industry. Royal Rota, beware. Who you will be taking the rap for when the law catches up with you all. Why then are the family intent on ruining this couple? The abuse behind palace walls needs to be made public, All we do know is that Meghan felt suicidal whilst pregnant with Archie and sought help from the Royal HR team, but was refused assistance on the basis that she was not considered an employee, and it would look bad on the royal family that a member of the said family was in need of mental health assistance. I think the real reason was that it would shine a light on not only the UK media, who are acting on behalf of the royal family anyway, but also the treatment by the royal family itself towards Meghan. We all now know that the royal family made no financial provision for Meghan when she married into the family. In reality, she was treated like the slave of the royal family. So to drive someone to the point where they wanted to commit suicide, I fail to see how they believe that Harry could put all that to one side and return to the UK on his own, whether his wife was alive or not, and be all right with all the abuse that had gone on, and somehow become a compliant slave to help his brother and wife, who were one of the key players in the abuse that was dished out to the Sussex family. All of those royals live in tax-funded homes, and properties are all worth more than the former servant shack allocated to Harry and Meghan, and for which the couple had to repay all the renovation costs for a property they did not own. It appears that they were notified but not consulted about such amendments. Same thing happened with Archie's birth certificate. Alterations were agreed by the royal family, but no one consulted the parents, Harry and Meghan. So the birth certificate for Archie was changed. Only Meghan's title remains. Her name was removed. Harry's name and title is still on the birth certificate. Every other child born within the royal family has both parents' name on the birth certificate. Only the person of colour has had hers omitted. No name, just like slaves from the plantation. No identity, just a title, which could mean anyone in the future when history books are read for information. The dehumanisation of people of colour from the white royal bloodline is a common trait of white supremacists throughout history. Typical behaviour of a racist clan. Treat them like slaves who have no rights. If someone did that outside the royal family in the UK, it would be against the law. With the government in place in the UK at the moment, and for the foreseeable future, that situation will not change. This is the government who is behind the recent report on racism in the UK, which has declared that it is a role model country for other mainly white populated countries in the world to operate in terms of their ethnic minorities. The whole report is deeply offensive and so far from truth and accuracy, it is an affront to common decency and ensures that the future is far from bright for people of colour in the UK. It is time to highlight what the abusers have been doing and to bring it out into the light. It is time to see the huge machinery of resources that has been put in place to administer this level of ongoing cruelty to members who wish to move away from the control of the UK's British royal family. It is time to bring it to the seats of international lawmakers and courts, and to right the many wrongs that have been done to this couple, and to ensure that it never happens again to anyone in a similar position. If individuals outside of the royal family bubble had done any of these things to other members of the family, there would have been a multitude of professional organisations and law enforcement, child protection agencies and the like beating down the door. Just because it is happening behind gilded gates should not make it admissible. Abuse is abuse. Child abuse is child abuse. Mental health is mental health. None of these things are any less important because of the location of the abuse. And no abuser should be allowed to continue their activities because of where they live and that they are related to the monarch. This is 2024. We know better than that, or at least lawmakers should. And as the last guardian of legal process, international law establishments should not stand by and ignore victims of abuse. Just because the abusers are related or connected to the monarch, and their premises in which the abuse takes place is off limits to normal law enforcement. Unfortunately, for the British royal family, California has additional laws in respect of abusive and controlling activity towards any of its residents. The above-mentioned groups will one day, hopefully, hear from a legal entity in this regard. It is important to reiterate here that the abuse in respect of the Sussexes, and in particular Meghan, is still happening, even though the Sussexes no longer reside in the UK. Forced out in order to protect life and limb because of the continual abusive actions taken by the media authorised by the British royal family. I really need to know how, under international law, an American citizen was abused over a 4-year period in the UK, and no one questioned the activity. Abused to the point that suicidal ideation followed as a direct result of the years-long campaign to destroy Meghan in any way possible, in order that she would be removed from the equation by any means, and that Harry would be controlled again, and return the British royal family positive image with no spotlight on their diminishing purpose in a modern society. The British royal family consider themselves advocates of many things, including acting as token representatives of various mental health initiatives. It is beyond offensive as to how dangerous that role is when we consider the actual truth of the matter. The British royal family are not advocates of anything but self-preservation of the monarchy. And if that means appearing to care about various causes and showing up now and then to smile and wave, and to show concerned expressions when speaking to the staff of those organisations, or smiling on camera via Zoom sessions, they will do it a few times a year to a few organisations. These visits or Zoom calls are then listed in royal records as work, an hour or two here or there. The reality is, Meghan, an American citizen, was abused in a variety of ways on UK soil and it continued in Canada and continues now that she's home in California. When the abuse is carried out daily by UK media, the propaganda arm of the British royal family, victims have the right to expect protection under the law. Whilst Meghan was being ill-treated behind palace gates by a UK monarchy who presides over UK subjects, a monarchy who made it clear Meghan was not family, no financial provision made for her upon marriage, paid all of her own expenses, not an employee either, so not entitled to health care or shown any concern despite knowing that Meghan was suicidal. If UK law is under pressure to turn a blind eye, then the independence of international law should be visibly taking the reins. By their own admission, the British royal family did not give Meghan a designation. Even her name was removed, as we said before, from her child's birth certificate. Like so many things relating to history of the UK monarchy, rewriting history is not new to them. But in this day and age, it should not be allowed. Legal entities in the UK seem reluctant to take action, or in fact shown any concern of any abuse that has been going on for decades, if not longer, to children and adults behind palace walls. Now we have an American citizen who is psychologically shackled by UK royalty and its tabloid press under their instruction. And the tentacles of abusive actions have continued on Canadian and then now on USA soil. Lawmakers and protection agencies turned a blind eye in the UK for 4 years, and I have yet to understand how an American citizen can be held like a prisoner in her residence in the UK, with all her personal documentation held by the HR team for the British royal family, and told to be 50% of herself and to make herself less visible, cut off from friends and needing permission to do things. There is no law in the UK that HR needs to hold your passport, driving licence, credit cards and keys, which is what the royal family did to Meghan. HR only needs to see the originals and photocopy said documents, such as passport and driving licence, and then officially stamp the copies that the originals have been seen. No regulation requires any organisation to hold on to the originals. It is also illegal to alter a birth certificate, whether or not the parents were informed. Meghan is the only person of colour in the British royal family and the only one to have her name removed from her child's birth certificate, with only the title on this important document. I really would like to know how a USA citizen is allowed to be a victim of abuse in the UK, and that it continues even though Meghan is back on home soil. 100 plus of abusive articles are written in the UK press most days about the Sussexes, particularly about Meghan. TV programmes have panels of non-entities discussing the Sussexes in the most disparaging and cruel ways. Again, I ask the legal experts here and in the USA, why is this allowed to go on? Hatred attracts income, so it is clear why the evil souls who pursue such activities do what they do. But people have died in the UK due to behaviour of UK media, and many, many more are dealing with the aftermath of being on the receiving end of such treatment. To the credit of the Sussexes, they are now building a new life. But I have no doubt there is so much trauma present, and there has been no time to heal. It has been firefighting all the way, and the constant worry of risk to life. Meghan was abused and harassed during her first pregnancy. The aim was to cause a miscarriage. To hear in the Oprah interview that Meghan had suicidal thoughts during that pregnancy came as a shock, but not a surprise when we recall the behaviour of UK tabloids during that period towards Meghan. 2 years plus of daily abuse at that point would have driven many others to that way of thinking way before that point in time. It proves how strong Meghan is and how much she endured, and yet the British royal family and its press never relented. We are lucky to have Meghan and Archie here today. Harry knew he had to find a way to escape with his family for their safety and mental health. When the news of the Sussexes' miscarriage was announced in 2020, the venom continued. It was beyond disgusting. There is a podcast discussing the role of UK media, the British royal family, and the various hater groups out there who piled on the abuse during this period. Be warned, it is a very emotionally charged podcast. I repeat, why has no legal action been taken against those responsible for abusive behaviour on a daily basis? Abusers who are UK citizens in terms of the media and the British royal family, and the UK and internationally based hate groups and individuals, many with monetised accounts, operating with borderline illegal activity and certainly inciting hatred. A prominent USA citizen has been the victim of various forms of abuse for over 4 years, and it's continuing on USA soil. How is this allowed to happen? When Princess Diana was abused and ultimately met her death, many UK citizens had their own ideas why the UK legal system did nothing about it. Please, USA, do not be the same. Do not turn a blind eye to abuse. Do not allow a situation like in USA Gymnastics to take 30 years to begin court proceedings against 2 individuals. Many more are still working with children at risk. Do not allow the Sussex family to continue to live in fear for their lives or their mental health. The documentary series produced by Harry and Oprah, The Me You Cannot See, is powerful, and I am sure will be an educational aid for years to come, as well as a recipient of many awards, I am sure. There have to be alternatives to achieve peace and tranquility, other than a heart no longer beating. The world does not want to see another Princess Diana incident. Certain presenters in televised media have become personalities in their head, and in so doing seem to walk a fine line when it comes to stalking, harassment and abusive activity. One particular presenter was given a 2-page spread in a tabloid, which he writes for, and who was the tabloid that Meghan won her historical recent court case. explains why this same tabloid gave him a platform to make threats towards Meghan, telling her that he is not finished yet, and with a large photo of him pointing his finger. The level of harassment and stalking he does regarding Meghan is dangerous and way off the scale now. Since he became unemployed from his TV role, the man appears unhinged, and worryingly, he has a home in the USA and has residency in California as well as the UK. I believe questions should be asked pertaining to his residency in the same state as the family, one person in particular who he remains fixated about. He targets daily. One of his most recent diatribes in front of a camera was to inform the viewers that if he had his way, he would dismember the body parts of the Sussexes, and went into graphic detail as to what he would do or what he would like to do with each limb. USA elected officials at the highest levels, together with the seniors at California level, what exactly are you waiting for before you act? Are you waiting for another death to occur? One unborn baby so far, and counting. It is disgusting, and I would like to think that you do not operate in the gutter like too many parts of the UK establishment. In September 2020, California passed a coercive control bill in respect of the protection of all Californian residents. The UK coercive control legislation applies not only to ex-partners, but also to groups, including families, who are abusive and controlling towards the chosen victim. Much of what took place in the UK for those first 4 years is covered in the UK's own legislation. But as usual, when someone wears a shiny hat with its own chauffeur, illegal matters are ignored, and practicing legal professionals seem afraid to take on the establishment, and probably console themselves with the fact that Harry and Meghan are affluent, not broke like how the monarchy family expected them to be. So legal professionals in the UK do not want to risk ruining their law practice, it seems. If I am wrong, they have had 8 years and counting to do something about it all. I think that after 8 years, this whole abusive activity needs to be lifted out of the UK's hands, and international law, who also cherry-pick which cases they get involved with or not, need to step up and do the job that they have been lucky enough to be given. If they do not feel confident enough to take on such responsibility, step aside and let a newly qualified group of people step forward, because I am sure in their efforts to make a name for themselves, look at a case like this. Academic research papers could be undertaken for decades to come, which will all provide to be a rich, which will all prove to be a rich source of learning for students of the future. Every single day, multiple articles are written about Harry and Meghan. Meghan in particular comes in for the most ire, and then TV media run programmes every day discussing how terrible the Sussexes are, and in particular Meghan, who is apparently the controlling influence. If you could hear just a few of the things that UK media personnel are more than happy to say out loud, on camera, tells you how confident they are that there will be no comeback from management about their conduct. Whether it is to wish death upon the Duchess of Sussex, and how William would be there to console his brother, just like they did when they were known as the Boys. Another skit they did on one of their reporters interviewing reporters programs. Yeah, that's how desperate they've become now. Where it was suggested that the Sussexes should bring their children to the UK. And they should be on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. One royal reporter thought it was highly amusing to then have someone hold Archie over the balcony and decide whether or not to drop him. Lots of laughter in that sketch, all on camera, and no matter what they have erased, receipts exist around the globe by the supporter network. It was disgusting. There was another incident by a TV presenter who said he would love to see Harry and Meghan thrown off the Buckingham Palace balcony for what they have done to the royal family. Again, disgusting. And once again, I am not going to give any further words to describe my thoughts on that. I will, however, say that karma is always on time. Just like how that TV presenter wished such an awful fate for the Sussexes, leaving 2 children without parents, to no doubt hope to have them in the royal fold to treat like slaves of days of old. Let me say now, no matter what law any UK person could quote, that would never happen. Plain and simple. There is no way that any of the global support network would stand aside and let those babies be in the same room as any of the evil souls on that plantation. Not a chance in hell. I came across a thread on a social media platform some time ago from an academic, Dr. Claire Hardaker, PhD, who did a study on the number of articles written by this said presenter in the last year. Thank you, Dr. Hardaker, for granting permission for me to use these statistics in this podcast. Dr. Hardaker looked at 12 months of headlines written by the said presenter. There were 84 in total. Researching all the words used statistically, the presenter's Christian and surname was 3rd and 4th on the list. Clearly loves talking about himself. Coming in at 9th, 23rd and 32nd was Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and the President. The presenter's interest in US politics is well documented. In 26th and 35th place were Harry and Meghan. In fact, both appear in 17 headlines in total. That is one headline every 3 weeks for a year, and one in every 5 dedicated to writing something about one or both. The words and concepts used in the headlines about Meghan are as follows: brats, brazen, cynical, damage, deluded, diatribe, disgraceful, disowned, disregard, dump, garbage, hate, hypocrite, hypocrites, hypocritical, narcissism, narcissistic, nauseating, parody, preach, propaganda, race baiting, tone deaf, victimhood, victims, virtue signalling, whiny, woke, and wrecked. Dr. Claire Hardaker stated, pretty sure that there is a project in here about abuse and harassment. They wanted Meghan to leave and for Harry to stay behind as a broken man, but being the foot soldier, poster boy or slave, whatever anyone wants to call it, for the royal family, Prince William in particular. That is what second and subsequent royal children are brought into the world to do, and they call it duty, and are referred to in a derogatory way as spares. Those children should never have any ambitions that outshine the heir to the throne. Even Harry's earned title of Major was never allowed to be used because it would have been above the rank achieved by his older brother. They underestimated Harry all his life and never expected him to walk away from the whole lot. All the tricks and barriers placed in front of the Sussexes in order to make them fall outside of palace gates all failed. And now they are hugely successful, self-financing, and cost the UK taxpayer nothing. The divorce from being a taxpayer royal is now absolute. The British royal family, through its media propaganda team, refuse to move on. This is not the era like when Diana was treated so badly by the family and the media. Social media exists now. News travels fast and receipts exist. All the sycophantic haters who thrive off hateful social media posts and activity should seek therapy and create a new life moving forward. Technology will soon seek you out, and there will be consequences for the reckless posting on social media one day. All that is required now is for USA and or international lawmakers to put an end to this continual abuse of an American citizen back on USA soil, and who is still being abused for clickbait income and revenge for escaping from the modern-day slave plantation paid for by UK taxpayers. A plantation where children and adults are abused with impunity. Born into opulence does not protect anyone from abuse. A regime supported by a government which has questions to answer on many legal fronts, and a backdrop of the impact of Brexit on UK residents, particularly those for people of colour. I will end this podcast with a reminder that Harry and Meghan never used any of the British royal family medical team or used the standard hospital team to give birth to Archie. The medical team was not revealed due to fear of harassment by the press. UK media had personnel all outside all of the likely venues for the birth, trying to find any information possible. We now know it was also fear of harm to mother or baby or both. I am thankful that they are in the USA and that things would have been put in place to secure a safe delivery and peace and calm in the days surrounding the birth of their baby girl, rather than the vigilante antics in the UK employed the last time. British royal family and media pals, your abused victims are now survivors. The divorce you asked for is now absolute. Time to move on and focus on the royal family members you all claimed were and are relevant. Stop clinging to the Sussex's wave of success. It appears to the world at large that the UK, having forced the family out of the country, and realised that the Sussexes have overcome every barrier the monarchy placed in front of Harry and Meghan, and are now hugely successful. The British royal family are now becoming desperate to tie themselves to the couple in any way possible, no matter how tenuous. It does not in any way make the UK look good. The behaviour moves between criticising everything the Sussexes do in a negative way, in an effort to sabotage their projects, and in the next breath, when the positive reports are so good, stories appear in the press how they want to encourage Sussexes back into the fold, etc., etc. A document came to light in one of the more serious papers relating to the royal family, refusing to employ people of colour or foreigners in the office roles at any of their palaces. They would be considered for servant roles only. This stipulation was made in 1968. Alongside this rule, the British royal family ensured that it was written into UK law that they did not have to abide by equality legislation. The royal family have made no comment since this article was published. Supporters of the monarch keep repeating that was in the 60s, when most businesses did that. What they are missing is that practice still occurs today, and the family still do not need to abide by equality legislation. One cannot help but wonder, why would anyone wish to be exempt from compliance with such laws? If everything was being done in accordance with the law, it also means that for the few people who are employed in any role in the palaces, they have no route of legal redress if there is a problem whilst they are employed there. The employer in question is legally exempt from what the rest of the nation has to abide by. It almost goes without saying, if the British royal family did not want people of colour in their offices, then it should come as a surprise to no one that they did not want a person of colour in their family. Hence the Meghan situation, and also the conversations debating the shade of their unborn first child's skin. I hope many of UK media, royal reporters and TV presenters are held personally accountable in the courts for their actions and their words in articles against this couple. Karma has no clock, and karma is never late. Part 2 of this podcast will be shown next week. In next week's podcast, we will cover a number of topics which cover much of the establishment movement and actions mapped against the Kubler-Ross model of 7 stages of grief, and includes these topics and more. which also cover things we have looked at over the last 2 weeks, including the following topics. Cyberstalking. Stalking or harassment can take place on the internet and via other technologies. This is sometimes known as cyberstalking. This can include the use of social networking sites, email, chat rooms and other forums facilitated by technology. The internet can be used for a range of purposes. For example, to locate personal information about a victim, to communicate with the victim, as a means of surveillance of the victim, identify theft such as subscribing the victim to services, purchasing goods and services in their name, damaging the reputation of the victim, electronic sabotage such as spamming and sending viruses, accessing spyware or malware, tricking other internet users into harassing or threatening a victim. Further guidance can be found in social media and other electronic communications prosecution guidance. Substantial adverse effect. The phrase substantial adverse effect on another's usual day-to-day activities is not defined in Section 4A, PHA 1997. The guidelines issued by the Home Office suggest some examples. The victim changing their routes to work, work patterns or employment. The victim arranging for friends or family to pick up children from school to avoid contact with the stalker. The victim putting in place additional security measures in their home. The victim moving home. Impact on physical or mental ill health. The deterioration in the victim's performance at work due to stress. The victim stopping or changing the way they socialise. There should be no assumption as to what a typical victim might look like or behave like when assessing the evidence as to substantial adverse effect. Stalking or harassment. In cases of stalking or harassment, the support and safety needs of victims should be identified from the outset and continually considered throughout the life of a case by the police in dialogue with the prosecutor. Many cases of stalking or harassment will come within the definition of domestic abuse. I'm going to bring this week's podcast to a close. There are a few more interesting snippets, that I like the few I've just quoted to you that we'll explore next week. Obviously, I am not legally trained. This is just all done from quite a lot of research, reading of various things. But even with my research, not being a legal person, I am not going to read out chapter and verse in any podcast just because I'm not going to aid any of the people or groups that I am referring to as being abusers. I am not going to give them help. They can fork out their own coins to get legal representation if that day ever arrives. But what I am doing is just giving you a few nuggets, food for thought. Likewise, they will as well if they choose to listen. Food for thought as to some of the things that I very much doubt they consider relates to them. I think that they do, and a lot more that in fact, the majority of what I think applies to them, I'm not going to talk about in a podcast. These are just giving you little snippets of areas of the law that I feel should be explored more. But trust me when I say there is a lot more than the ones I'm going to be quoting, and I won't be quoting them in the future. That'll be for people who are legally trained, and hopefully they can do that in a courtroom setting with the appropriate people in front of them. This is just to say, in my own way, I am trying to do what I can to put ideas forward to hopefully legal professionals who may be very, very busy on a whole range, not maybe, I'm sure they are, very busy on a whole range of things, and maybe certain things hasn't crossed their mind. So just know there's a lot more topics and areas of the law that I will be putting forward, adding to what I've done previously, with targeted individuals that I have in mind over the coming weeks. And I want them to do the job that they're employed to do, or in some cases elected to do. And if they can't, then they find the appropriate people. And if they don't, I shall continue. But we'll say enough about that for today. Hope you found this of interest. Again, it may have been dry in some areas, but I do think when you think of the legal terminology, just switch it to instances of activity that have gone on in areas and people that we are interested in and wish to support. I've done a lot of that, and I've mapped them across, not in podcasts clearly, and not in any images clearly, but there will be such things going to people who are legally trained for them to make of it what they wish. But yeah, I see us as being a global support network, and all of us are doing our part in supporting this couple and their children. And Mama Doria, of course. So, as usual, I will look forward to hearing your thoughts, reading your thoughts as well, Sunday night onwards. So it's bye from me, bye from Ivy, bye.
There's a message drifting in the air. If you listen, you will notice music everywhere.